Canada has been known for producing rugged tough guy boxers like Armand Savoy, Yvon Durrell, Clyde Gray, and George Chuvalo, among others. Eddie Melo was cut from the same cloth, and at one point in the late 1970s, he was the most popular of them all, a fighter and mob enforcer known as the oldest of 5 children. Melo was born in a small fishing village in Portugal before emigrating to Canada at the age of 5 with his family. Melo would grow up in the Little Portugal neighborhood in Toronto's inner city, where he would fight in the streets often. "I wasn't afraid of anybody," Melo said. "I was a little cocky for my age." His father worked as a construction worker, but both of his parents were illiterate. Melo didn't do well in school, but excelled in all athletics, and he discovered boxing at the age of 11 at Sully's Boxing Gym. Falling in love with the sport, he would study films of Joe Louis and Joe Frazier. Melo would have 97 amateur fights, winning 93, while competing in the Ontario Boxing Association, an amateur federation that had 5 rounds instead of 3 and didn't require headgear. Seeing a bleak future in Canada's amateur program, Melo would drop out of school in the 10th grade and turn to professional boxing. But the Ontario Boxing Commission would refuse to license him because of his age, and he moved to Montreal, training under Travis Sugden. "I look at it this way," Melo said. "I either do what I'm doing because I enjoy it, or I go and work for somebody and punch a clock for the rest of my life, and I don't want to do that." Melo would turn pro in March of 1978. At the time, the Montreal Athletic Commission didn't allow an 18-year-old to box more than 8 rounds, but with Melo, the point was moot, as he would knock out his first 9 opponents. "Like a hurricane, he was in your face," boxing promoter Vince Bagnato said. "He never stopped. It was like the wind coming from all directions." In October of 1978, Melo would take on fringe contender Fernand Marcotte. Some critics believed that it would be too much too soon for the young Melo, as he only had been a pro for 7 months, and Marcotte was a 56-fight veteran who had been in with the likes of Rocky Mattioli and Clyde Gray. The fight would attract 4,500 fans to the Verdun Auditorium.
Very good fight experience for me, and it was a hard fight. I thought I was going to knock him out around the 6th round, but I didn't, and I fought a cautious fight because he was a champion. I had a lot of respect in there for him.
Okay, but it was a non-title fight. Then what's going on with you now after that?
Well, we're supposed to fight him back in December 5th for the title.
It is more than suppose.
Yeah, well, it's signed, like on the contract, to fight him back after 5 weeks.
Melo would win a split decision. He would then stop former Canadian middleweight champion Gerald Bouchard in 3 rounds in front of a record crowd at the Verdun Auditorium of over 5,400 people. He was fast becoming Canada's most popular fighter, a matinee idol with an explosive fighting style. There was talk of American contenders like Vito Antuofermo, David Love, or Benny Briscoe coming to Montreal to fight Melo within a year. He's got that magic, boxing trainer Ted McWhorter said. He's got that something special. His promoter Regis Levesque stated that Melo fever had replaced Saturday Night Fever in Montreal. But Melo would lose a decision in a rematch with Fernand Marcotte for the Canadian middleweight title, allegedly going into the fight with an injured right hand. His management team was criticized for not postponing the fight and for putting the almighty dollar ahead of Melo's career. Trouble would start outside the ring as well. Melo would be convicted of wounding a bouncer in a brawl at a Toronto disco, getting 90 days in jail. He would then have an on and off again relationship with his trainer Travis Sugden, and Ted McWhorter would take over training duties temporarily. In November of 1979, Melo would sign a 3-year contract with Don King, but would continue to only have middling success, losing to Vinny Curto and suffering a brutal knockout loss to Gary Summerhays for the Canadian light heavyweight title. Melo would lose his confidence after the fight, retiring at the age of 20. Eddie came up too fast and fought too many good fighters too soon, his trainer Sugden said. I guess we're all to blame. But Melo's retirement would be short-lived. He would return to the ring, but the results would be hot and cold. He would then become employed under Montreal Mafia boss Frank Cotroni, becoming his chauffeur and bodyguard. In July of 1981, Melo would confront a bartender and tell him to sign a union application for the hotel, restaurant, and cafeteria employees' local Union 75. When the bartender refused, Melo threatened him with a gun, stating that he would harm him and his family if he didn't sign. Melo would be arrested and fined $500. By this time, the win had been removed from the sails of his boxing career. He would lose to journeyman Lancelot Innes, getting floored and punished for 10 rounds. He would then take on longtime arch-rival Jimmy Gradson, who had been fighting in Melo's shadow for several years. There was bad blood between the two, as Gradson claimed Melo stabbed one of his friends, and now he would get revenge in the ring.
That was the whole thing for the first 5 rounds. Box him. I was trying to take it out of him from his belly. I was trying to hit him because I know Jimmy doesn't like to be hit down there, so I was taking it out of him slowly. I knew that Jimmy was losing his strength. That's why I was holding a little bit. That was the whole fight plan. Every time Jimmy got me on the ropes, instead of fighting his style and wore him back, there was nothing to do. Just grab him, let the referee break, and every time I broke, I ended up getting with an uppercut or something, which I felt that the referee should have warned Jimmy, but he didn't do that.
No, I went to, say congratulations and everything to him, and he told me to screw. So I told him he's a bad sportsman, and I accepted. So he's a bad sportsman. He stabbed my friend. I proved to my friend that I can knock him out, and I knocked him out for my friend and my people behind me.
I'd like to fight Jimmy again. Fight before, maybe right back and fight him. That's totally up to Travis and Dave, two people that are looking after me.
Would you give him a rematch?
No, show me the money, and I'll give him a rematch, and I'll knock him out earlier.
You have a little more respect for Jimmy Gradson now than before the fight?
Well, it's funny. I really still don't respect Jimmy as a person, as a fighter.
Melo would fight on, but now his career seemed stuck in journeyman status. His corner would throw in the towel for him against Rolf Hollett, but he would get a revenge victory over Gary Summerhays in June of 1983. It was a victory that Melo had long wanted. That cleared something out of my mind that was bothering me, Melo said. For a long time, I don't think I wanted to believe the Summerhays fight affected me that way. I feel comfortable with myself now. I know a lot of people are going to say, Eddie's finished, but I know deep down that I can get it back anytime I want. There was talk of Melo facing the up-and-coming Don Lalonde, but the fight never materialized. By 1985, he had split with trainer Travis Sugden again, but won 6 straight fights before going to Portugal and getting knocked out by Jose Seis in the first round. Melo would then retire from the sport for good. He would turn to working full-time as an enforcer and driver for Frank Catroni. He would strong-arm debtors and intimidate club owners into allowing the sale of Catroni's drugs. In 1989, at a pool hall, Melo assaulted a fellow mobster, which led to a murder plot against him, with a hitman being hired to kill him. Canadian authorities caught wind of the plot and told Melo that a contract had been taken out on his life. The hired hitman had become a police informant, and Melo was then placed under protective custody for 2 days as his plotters were arrested. Meanwhile, Melo would continue to have his own brushes with the law, blaming his own bad temper and the tendency of bar patrons to challenge him to fights. It's like with John Wayne, Melo said. People wanted to see who was the fastest gun in town. But time goes by, you learn that if somebody challenges you, you walk away and you're a better man. In 1991, Melo didn't walk away after an amateur boxer named Danny DeJulio challenged him at a party. Melo punched DeJulio, causing fractures to his facial skeleton that required screws and a plate to repair. Melo would be arrested and sentenced to 90 days in jail. Because of his criminal activity and mob ties, Melo would be under police surveillance for years. In 1999, Canadian authorities wanted Melo to be deported back to Portugal. By this time, he had 2 daughters with his first wife and a son with his now common-law wife. Melo would fight the judgment, stating that the deportation would create an undue hardship for himself and his family. A lot of people know my past, Melo said. I can't hide that, but it's over. I don't associate with any of those people anymore. Melo would get the decision overturned and was allowed to stay in Canada. But in April of 2001, he would be shot to death in the parking lot of a shopping plaza. His cousin Johnny would also be killed in the shooting. Fleeing the scene in a red Honda Civic, the gunman was identified as biker gang member Charles Gagne, who was a hitman hired by Mike De Silva and Delio Pereira. De Silva was an owner of an Ontario trailer park who hired Gagne to kill Melo for $75,000. Gagne was a violent inmate who was on a weekend pass from jail, spending the time killing Melo, then his cousin, who was a witness. De Silva had an escalating dispute with Melo, and it is believed that the murder was part of a long-standing conflict between 2 dueling Italian crime families. Over 400 people attended Melo's funeral, including Canadian boxing notables such as Nicky Furlano and Clyde Gray. In the eulogy, Reverend Fernando Couto said, quote, "The young Eddie, he grew up too fast. We don't know the rest. Only God sees."